This episode of Keys to the Shop is brought to you by Prima Coffee. Whether it's espresso machines, manual brewing devices, or general coffee shop needs, they seek to pursue the most innovative coffee products, both domestic and abroad, to offer their customers. Find out more at prima-coffee.com. This is Keys to the Shop, episode 55, the keys to personal growth and development with Jared Truby of Cat and Cloud Coffee. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop. I'm excited to have you along today. My name is Chris DeFirio. I'm your host for the show, and this show is designed to give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. And I'm really excited to welcome Jared Truby to the show today to talk about personal development and growth in our career. But before we get deeper into that, I want to thank our sponsor here at Keys to the Shop, Prima Coffee. Prima Coffee is a specialty coffee equipment supplier based out of Louisville, Kentucky. And from the beginning of their company, they've set out to make the best coffee brewing equipment available to the general public. And their focus is on curating the best equipment for every need, from grinders to espresso machines to under-counter fridges, pour-over stations, you name it, coffee brewers. If you go to prima-coffee.com and peruse the website, you're going to find a ton of gear and also a lot of helpful resources on the website to help you understand a little bit more about what you're purchasing. They do a great job curating the list of items that they have there at Prima Coffee. They put a big emphasis on having the expertise to help their customers get the right gear to fit every situation. I've known them for a long time. I'm a big fan of their company and the people that run it. So go to prima-coffee.com to find out more information. Give them a shout, email them, ask them all the questions that you got. They are so open and willing to help. And my thanks to Prima Coffee for their support of the show and their support of the coffee industry by providing us with excellent tools to help us do our jobs well. So today, like I said, we're talking about personal growth. We're talking about development and professional development. And when you work in coffee, it's all kind of linked, especially if you're not just doing this as a temporary job and you're passionate about it. And chances are, if you're listening to a coffee podcast, then you're probably pretty passionate about your job. You're passionate about coffee and you want to learn how to do things better. You want to be better. And it's a flavor of a lot of our episodes here at Keys to the Shop because it's something that I personally believe in, and I know most people want to become better. The question is, how do we go about pursuing that, and how do we start to do that from outside resources, from the world of business that offers us a lot of solutions for problems that we're trying to fix maybe in a vacuum sometimes? When I was a barista, I know that I never really went to books about different problems. I just tried to figure them out myself. And I was looking to the people next to me to help me solve issues. And that sometimes worked out well. Other times you need to rely on a body of information that has been tested and proven. And there's a wide world out there of personal growth and development literature and materials that we can draw from. I'm a firm believer that who we are now and what we become in 10 years will be largely based on what we allow ourselves to be influenced by and how we choose to influence others. What decisions you make every day in small ways and large ways shapes the person who you're going to be in the long run. And outside the coffee world, like I said, there's a whole world of resources. And so how do we take the first step in developing and pursuing personal development and self-guided growth? And what are some tips and what are some keys that we should keep in mind as we go down this road and try to pull from those outside resources and help expand our horizons so that we are drawing from a larger pool to help us become better? So to help us with all of this is the one and only Jared Truby of Cat and Cloud Coffee. Jared has been in the coffee industry for 16 years and has worked in many different areas from retail to roasting, wholesale, and operations, and lots of different leadership positions. And he now owns Cat and Cloud Coffee in Santa Cruz, California, with 2 other partners. He has been a national finalist and regional barista champion and has been featured in the cover of Barista Magazine and Fresh Cup Magazine. His passions are service, growth, training design, education, the culinary world, bringing groups of people together to accomplish big goals. He also has, as I'm sure most of you are aware, a podcast, a very popular coffee podcast called Cat and Cloud Coffee Podcast, of course, with Chris Baca, that they use as a platform to share information, stories, and ideas with the hopes to encourage people to see a lot of different perspectives, multiple perspectives. So bringing personal growth and development and bringing in resources from outside the coffee industry, and also just trying to instill these ideals and these ideas into other people has been something that Jared has pursued since early in his career. And I hope that this conversation inspires you to start your own journey into personal development. So let's get to my conversation now, all about personal growth and development with Jared Truby of Cat and Cloud Coffee. All right, Jared Truby, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you?
So good.
I'm excited to have you on the show. I've been wanting to get you on here for a while, so welcome again. And, we just heard your bio, your resume, and it's impressive. You've been in coffee for how long now?
Yeah, I guess over 16 years now. Geez.
16 years. Wow.
Yeah, I can drive.
So in that time, you've just done a lot. You've done a lot of training and management. You've competed. You were at Verve. You're at the French Press, which is the roasting arm of that is now Dune Coffee Roasters. Is that right?
Right.
And of course, everybody, I don't know if everybody, there might be some that don't know, you're the 50% of Cat and Cloud podcast and one of the 3 owners of Cat and Cloud Coffee Roasters in Santa Cruz. So you're staying busy.
There's some busyness involved, yeah.
Well, congrats to you guys and all the success you're having. Really cool to see. So in all that time, I know, because you've talked about it on the podcast before, and I thought this would be a really good thing to talk about. It is bringing in outside inspiration and education and tools from other industries to help us grow and help yourself grow in the coffee industry. So as you advanced in your career in coffee over the 16 years, when did you first start to draw from other industries for your personal development and inspiration?
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, there's a bunch of parts to that. There's the original simple part of going to my first barista competition and just seeing, that I was in a bubble and I assumed that I had hit a ceiling, and then there was just so much more to learn. And there's that kind of like basic thing that I think happens to everybody. But beyond that, what started to happen is the companies that I would work for always understood or had kind of like a quality indicator of like, we want to do this thing super amazing. And it was, in my opinion, it just wasn't big enough. It didn't help me personally get a why for one thing. And it also didn't allow me to personally grow. So, for instance, it's like I knew at one point how to pull at, call it Verve, because that was my first real specialty coffee, right? I knew how to pull like a really, really amazing shot of espresso, how they said it should be done and how we had decided. But I always had this issue when somebody couldn't tell me exactly why, and it was always just because somebody else said it. And I realized that our industry was so young that I started needing to just look outside of us as a coffee, especially coffee industry, and see what was going on out there. So it started really, really early. Whenever I'd ask like, why do we do this? And nobody really had like a solid answer, I would start looking elsewhere and be like, well, what are some other perspectives, whether it be in culinary or, and I know we'll talk about it in a bit, but, Disney and like amusement parks, or whether it be even just like state parks and weird things like that. Like, how do people operate? What do they do and why do they do it? So it was really, really early.
Have you always been that way with information? Have you always been curious about the inner workings of things, how it works?
Yeah, that has definitely been something. I had a pretty amazing teacher in 8th grade who kind of beat that into us. I went to a private school, and he had his whole teaching curriculum was based on doing. It wasn't about the books, and it was always about making sure you knew why and how things were, and not just taking anything at face value. So at an early age, that was kind of put into me. And I know that I've made a lot of my bosses over the past like just tired, because if they couldn't give me a reason besides the idea of like, I just want it this way, I would always seek to find what would maybe be a better way. And whether that was pride or just being an idiot or just being me, it happened. And I was just like, well, if that's what you think is the best, like I'm going to have to prove that it is, or see if I can find a better way. And I don't know why that is, but it is for sure my thing.
Well, sure. I think that whenever you start on that path of curiosity and you're young, you're going to be kind of stupid in some ways. And that stupidity actually gives you courage to strike out and do things that you would talk yourself out of today, probably.
I'm not sure if I would personally.
Oh no? Are you okay? Hey,
it's too well. No, okay. So that's not 100% true. But I will always try to seek. Like I was talking about this with some people last night. I will always seek a bunch of information and see if I can put the best pieces of all of the people's information together to make the overall best application, versus just like, oh yeah, that's good. That's good enough. I'm still gonna go see what everybody else's perspective is, and see if I can apply the best versions of each person's perspective to have like the ultimate, Voltron assemble.
Nice. I think it's wise. That's wise. What were some of your early inspirations in this vein? So you struck out and you wanted to know more. Where first satisfied your curiosity? Yeah,
I mean, anybody who knows me knows it's Disney first.
Okay.
And part of that is just their first of all, they had proved it, right? They had gotten large. So they, in multiple levels, had hit this ability to establish connection emotionally. They had been able to establish professionalism and do something on a really large scale and bring in revenue. And then they had been able to do it at a high level of quality and are known for the highest service. And so my family grew up poor, but I went there one time with them, and I was just blown away on all levels. And then I started just looking into how they operated and what they did. And I can just hands down say, when somebody can kind of prove it, and then you can start studying and they're kind of open about what they do and how it works, it's something that I respect. And so that was definitely one of the first companies that did that. And then I started looking into, Michelin chefs and things, and like, Gordon Ramsay had made this goofy name for himself early on where everybody thought he was kind of a jerk. But if you look deeper, he's actually not so much of a jerk as everybody expects, and he's more of like he gets people to achieve levels higher than they ever expected of themselves, and he's actually quite a bit nicer than most people would assume. So I found myself looking in those two places specifically early on.
So when the world of Disney kind of opened up your mind and showed you how you could be challenged to get to another level professionally, did you start using that right away in the cafe?
So parts of it I did. So I'd go there and I'd see things that they did. Mostly it was just the way they treated people there, right? And just remembering that these people are guests, and honestly, Disney is one of the first to talk about, people coming to, a huge park, millions of people, treating them like guests and making sure that you are able to take care of them no matter your position. So, you're not, if you have like a quota of things to do, right, and you're supposed to get a bunch of people to sign up and get on the mailing list, and that's like what your job is, you can drop that job in order to just help somebody have a better day, and you're never going to get in trouble. And that's something I heard one of the cast members talking about early on. And so it was like a purpose over whatever process, I think is what they call it, or maybe what I call it. But the idea of a bigger purpose to this job and creating happiness. And so I did start applying that, early at Verve. It was, how do we take care of people? How do we make them feel comfortable? How do we make them trust us in such a way where it doesn't feel like you're trying to sell them something, and just, treat people nice. And that was the first thing that I think became a focus. And the other thing was taking from the culinary world, like looking for detail and trying to teach people to see what you see. So, if you have some experience in our industry, you just naturally are going to be able to see all sorts of details. And it's easy to forget that everybody doesn't have the same sight you do. And so a lot of the time what I'd do is I'd pull somebody over and just say, hey, we're obviously dominating right now. It's really busy. Tell me what you see. What's our strong points? What are our weak points right now? And we're going to compare some notes. So I'll tell you what I see and you can tell me what you see. And I just try to get people to think analytically about what's going on in the context of what we were trying to do and the goals we were trying to achieve. So those are the things that I think stuck really early on.
All of that sounds like you're exercising a point of view. It's like a point of view exercise. So like, what do you see? What do I see? Comparing notes helps you probably see what the customer sees. So you're not just going blind to dysfunction around you. And plus the Disney thing, people are there for the purpose and not the process. Although I bet you all of those cast members, and they call all of their staff who dress up or work there cast members, right?
Yeah.
And that would be a temptation for everyone who works there, just like it is for a barista, where you want to follow the rules and success is determined by a full checklist that you did. And that kind of robs us of the mission and purpose behind what we do. Do you think that's true?
I 100% think that is true. I would find, I would say that most people find themselves trying to get the checklist done a lot of the time at the expense of the guest experience. And that's really, really hard for me to see. And I see it all over the place. It's like, and again, this is sometimes not their fault. Sometimes this is the owners and either their inadvertent fault for not setting a clear mission and clear vision and values. And so, like I can empathize with this a little bit, but it's also if, for instance, if all I talked about was the perfect shot of espresso and the recipe and the grind settings and this, that, and the other, so should my staff, because they're being modeled, the owner cares most about quality and technical, espresso preparation. Mm-hmm. And so, that's a little bit of the fault of the owner, but I do see that as an issue personally if you're thinking of coffee as a hospitality service. And I think we need to remember that coffee is hospitality, not, a culinary cooking show where you get to present something most of the time.
Yeah, sure. You guys are doing a great job spreading the message of hospitality in the industry. And also, I think that theme of maybe we should focus more on that is really huge right now. And it seems to be getting bigger. More people are talking about it. It's actually a bigger part of the SCA's curriculum than it used to be. If I might be wrong about that, so somebody correct me if I'm wrong. But
I believe you.
Yeah, I remember hearing stories about David Schumer and that whole demonstrating how your attention is focused on what the owner is doing, and therefore you know what their values are. You just get up on a chair and go arm deep into a grinder, trying to change the burrs, making noise that he didn't need to make, just to make sure that people knew it was really, really important to change the burrs in the grinder.
Totally. So, and you're demonstrating your values, right? And so that's like, okay, I know if I want to succeed here that I have to get good at that.
Yeah. And if you're a barista too, even like you did, anyone, no matter if you're an owner, a manager, or a barista, if you can lead yourself well, you can probably lead others well too, but it requires like knowing that you need to grow. And it was probably some challenges in the process of applying those things as you went to apply this knowledge that you had gained from outside the industry. Was there any kind of blowback or pushback?
Yeah, there's a lot of levels to that as well, because if you're the type of person who's interested in self-growth, which I hope everybody is, you kind of have to do some exploring. And there's tools out there, between the one everybody knows in Myers-Briggs, and there's the DISC assessments, and there's the Strength Finder, and there's, the Enneagram and all those things. I'd say if you could do all of them, you could start to self-assess a little bit, like who you are really and how you operate and what your motivations are. Because I think you really do have to know first and foremost what you're about in order to find a place you align with. But that did ultimately lead to, pushback. But the pushback, in my opinion, came from a realization of a disassociation of values in the companies I was working with at the times. So, you can be an amazing employee, and you can be an amazing manager, and you can be amazing at your job and technical, prowess and all this, that, and the other. But if what you're about ultimately doesn't align with what the company and the owners are about, then you're going to find yourself either getting in trouble or being kind of frustrated because you're not being authentic and true to who you are and what you believe in. And that is really where the pushback started to come for me. I found myself either being frustrated that I was doing stuff without knowing why and not being able to get answers, or I found myself kind of becoming a bit toxic and, being negative in my mind and not doing the best work that I possibly could, which also made me feel bad. And so it was like a lose-lose for me until I, figured out how to deal with it. And open communication doesn't always help if there's a lack of understanding and there's a miscommunication of values and it won't ever line up. So that is for sure been a major growth opportunity and issue in my life.
Yeah, I can see how I happen to be, and I think this is the reason why I'm, wanting to talk to you, is diving into inspirational, business literature and personal development. There's a lot of stuff that can make you feel like the grass is greener if everybody just did it this way. So there's some humility lessons that you have to learn along the way, but then maybe some clarification that you need to get about your mission and purpose within the industry. And I mean, I imagine that this had no small part to play in eventually starting your own business.
Yeah, I had a major part to play.
Yeah.
It's funny. It's almost like you could agree with like 2/3 of something here, but you still, it's just ultimately became one of those things where I believed in, Chris and Charles as well, believed in my business partners, for anybody who happens to not know Chris Baca and Charles Jack. But there were certain things that weren't happening, and we felt like we could make them happen, and we believed in our ability to translate and start something from the beginning where we knew values-wise what we were trying to achieve, so that there wasn't this whole like, all right, now we're popular, who are we? And I couldn't deal with that anymore. I wanted somebody, and I felt like I had to make it myself, to just start something with knowing who we wanted to be and pursue it.
So let me ask you this. Making something that represents the values you have, that's something I hope that we all can do in some regard. Now, what we can do right away is we can make ourselves, we're responsible for who we are and the decisions that we make.
Right.
But, when I look around sometimes, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of pursuit of, these examples. Like for you, it was Disney, and for other people, they might have another business in mind, or they might read these, personal development books, but it's not really rampant in our industry. Do you think that's true? Do you think we tend to not tap into these sources or attack personal development the way we should?
I mean, and I can only say this based on what people talk about in the conversations that I've had over the last, 16 years. And I would say, yes, people do not. I find that almost nobody's interested, and it's slightly an exaggeration, but I'd say 10% of every conversation I've ever had has to do with personal development and exploring. And everybody seems to follow the loudest people in our industry, for better or worse. And it's not always bad, but it is, I think, a bubble that we tend to stay in. And it's hard for me to just feel like the world is such a big place and coffee is such a young industry, to have people being stunted all the time and doing the same things. I think that's hard for me too. just the repetition, and it just becomes, for me and not for everybody, there's just a lot less inspiration behind it than there used to be. And that's just a feeling. It's not necessarily right or true, but it's how I feel.
Well, when you told me that you don't know that you would do anything differently from when you were young or not stop yourself from taking on crazy stuff, I think that hit on the idea that, that was novel, that response. I wasn't expecting that, because a lot of us, we do get jaded, and one of the benefits of personal development, I think, allows us to rekindle some passion, rekindle some as you know yourself well enough to know how you're going to react in certain situations, and you improve yourself and not wait for other people to improve you. You're not going to get as bitter about things. But why do you think it is that we as an industry, or maybe people in general, have this, why are they averse to pursuing personal development? Like, why do we look at the self-help section of Barnes & Nobles when that was a thing, and go towards the magazines instead?
Yeah. I mean, it's like a hot seat question. Some of it is straight pride, I think, and some of it is like the need for validation. So I get it. We all want to feel special, and we all want to take credit for making something happen. So a lot of the time we find ourselves just debating over the better way to do whatever and to get a voice in this industry. And I think that you could have so much more impact in actually doing some of that self-help stuff and trying to apply some different perspectives. I really, truly don't know why more people aren't just obsessed with development. Because for me, that's it. It truly has been and always has been, and it's something that Chris Baca and myself have always understood each other. Is just we always want to continue to be growing. We always want to continue to be challenging even our own thoughts and methods. And it's not because we want to be jerks. It's just because we believe that there's no way that it's the best ever. Like you can always keep growing. It's not that there's something better to be done career-wise, that it's more like you can be a better person somewhere, and you can positively impact people around you if you continue to grow by teaching or just modeling. And if you're not doing that, then you're missing out on an opportunity to grow something that's bigger than just me, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so when I say pride, I often think that people just think, how do I grow myself? How do I make me? And I think that's a problem with business owners and just every part of our industry. It's all about me. And it can be about us. And that's kind of been my goal from the beginning of Cat and Cloud. And Chris and Charles is like, us is so much more powerful than me. So I think that's just something, I don't know if, I guess it's advice and it's a rant at that point, but yeah. No, I actually don't know why. Like, it kind of bums me out that everybody's trying to establish a platform where they know the most, you know, and maybe that's just my perspective on it. It sounds negative, but I think if you even listen to Chris and I, like, we'll talk trash a little bit on our podcast, but we also are not only putting our personal perspective in the mix. We're asking other people's perspectives. We're not just trying to say this is how it is. It's like, this is how we feel. And I would, there's no blanket statements because right. I just don't believe in them.
Well, that's the point of personal development, or at least, for our conversation, bringing in sources from outside where you are, where you're familiar, or maybe where you take for granted, right. Is that they are different perspectives, and they can manhandle your feelings a little bit where they need to be, and they can affirm you where you may not be affirmed too. It sounds like you benefit all around from doing that. Even by sometimes you've probably read things from outside the industry that you're just like, man, that's bogus. I don't believe that at all.
Totally.
And so you're affirmed in what you already knew. Like, hey, you might not have known a bunch about this industry or this book, but at least now you know that not everything that you learned in coffee was bad. It's just that there's more.
Yes, exactly. I 100% agree with that statement. There's just so much more than what we have to offer so far. Mm-hmm. And it's fun. I mean, yeah. And that's just, you're touching the iceberg there. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, let's do this. Like, say I'm listening to this and I've been saturated in coffee focused education, which is fine because that's what we do.
Yep.
And that's the thing that actually lets you keep your job.
Right.
So, but I've not really explored inspirational, motivational, or like personal development literature.
Right.
Where would you recommend somebody first start looking to, just go off the edge there and into something great?
Right. Well, so again, and this is me being me, but I'd have to know my own personal motivation. Mm-hmm. So you'd have to be honest with yourself a little bit. Not everybody wants to be a leader, and you really do have to be honest with yourself here, because a lot of people step into leadership because they want the attention, but they don't actually want to be a leader, and they don't want the hard life that comes with being a leader, because the leaders carry the most stress. If you're a good leader, the leaders have to be able to. Yeah. Anyways, I'm just saying that because I'm an owner of a business and I'm kind of in a leadership position. But I would say you have to decide what you want to be. Do you just want to be an amazing barista? Okay, great. You need to learn maybe to be great at service if you've already been studying the technical, side of this. So there's a book by James Kerr called Legacy, and it's about the rugby team, the All Blacks, out of New Zealand, and they have like the most winning percentage in the world, blah, 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 blah. But it's essentially 15 lessons in leadership, just about being excellent and humility, and just there's a whole bunch of nuggets in that book that I think are really awesome that you could apply along with maybe like Setting the Table, like a Danny Meyer book, where you could just start applying like more service and more teamwork to your development, and kind of make yourself, even if you don't want to step into management per se, you could make yourself the best on the squad. Mm-hmm. And set yourself up to, whether you stay in coffee forever or not, be a really, really valuable asset to anybody, anywhere. But if you do want to be in leadership, I think you need to explore, like vulnerability a little bit, and it's okay to be wrong, stuff like that. Like Patrick Lencioni, I think, is the dude, and Getting Naked is the book. And it's just a story about, how it's about tech and consulting and just learning about a dude in leadership, and how this person was vulnerable and open and built relationships and trust and things like that. Like, I'm Creating Magic by Lee Cockrell. Maybe I'm jumping ahead and you're going to ask me questions about books later, but I'm just looking at, there's my desk is right in front of me.
Nice,
and so
nice.
Yeah, I'm like, Creating Magic is like leadership lessons and how to interact with both guests and your team. So I mean, I would start beyond knowing your motivations and all the self-assessment, personality test things. I would decide, what do you want out of being in coffee, and is coffee going to be your long haul? And even if it's not, I would learn as much as I can about your ability to impact and be an amazing person to be employed by someone somewhere afterwards.
So those books I have not read, but I've read Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Is his like super famous book. I have my desk here too, except I have to turn away from the mic heavily to look at all these books here. And the thing is that you can there's this pride, like you were talking about before, that can come from learning a lot about self-development and developing yourself for yourself, which, we were just saying you want to do it for everybody, do it for the team, do it so that you can be a blessing to other people. Mm-hmm. And when we're talking about making the first step, I wonder if you could speak to getting over the pride of shame. Like, right. There's shame that comes from admitting that you need help. What's your opinion for those that need an extra push in that direction?
Oh, I would just say that the reward is so much more than that feeling of shame. And then also maybe you personally are putting that shame on you more so than the people who you might be open with. And the only reason I say that is there's that whole idea in cognitive behavioral therapy where you take yourself out of your mind and you say, what if like somebody came up to me and said what I'm about to say or what I'm thinking to them or to me, how would I respond? You know, it's like if somebody came up and said, yeah, like, you know, I wasn't pulling shots all day to spec and I didn't tell anybody. I'm like the worst person in the world. And would you respond to them and be like, yeah, you really are the worst person in the world. You just are you're terrible. You should quit right now. Or would you be like, okay, well, what can we do to help you? And everybody makes mistakes. You know, it's like maybe don't put so much pressure on yourself and realize that nobody's perfect and everybody's just a person. I mean, they all want the same things. They all want validation. They all want love. And so do you. And so you kind of have to model that a little bit. And I just encourage you to try it. It's not easy at all. It doesn't feel good. But find somebody who's safe enough to be vulnerable with and just try it a little bit, even if you have to practice before you do it with the real thing.
Right. That's interesting. You're talking about sort of giving grace to yourself the way that we could be hard. We could do negative self-talk a lot. And it sounds really, as they say, woo-woo, like to think about, oh, you're just saying negative things. It's time to start saying positive things. And when you go down that road, you know, sometimes it can be like, I don't want to be like Tony Robbins, like screaming mantras in my car during rush hour. But, you know, I don't know, maybe that's what you need. But the fact is that, you know, you are actually telling yourself a story about yourself all day long. You might as well get a little bit of a hold on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more of a deterrent than people realize. And there's times it can make you strive for amazing things, but is it at the cost of like your mental and emotional health? I don't know. And I think that the ability to be open and vulnerable is going to be more healing than it is hurting in the long run. And I can guarantee you it's not always going to be received the way you want it to, but I can also guarantee you that you're going to be a better person for practicing it.
What are some dangers in terms of overdoing it? Let's say if I get down this path and, you know, I was vegetarian for a year once.
Nice.
And I am firmly not now. And, you know, all the love in the world to anyone for whatever they eat. I don't care. But I was insufferable. And I became, you know, militant about it with other people. Is that a danger that we could fall into? And what are some other things that we should be aware of once we start really taking the reins of our development?
So I would say, I mean, one of the dangers is the idea, and I will do this, and it's definitely one of my faults, is that I will be like, same thing I said earlier, why isn't everybody, you know, and I'll be a little bit harsh on people sometimes. I'll be like, it's all right here in front of you. You could definitely help yourself and you're not. And so there is the ability to get a little high and mighty, and everybody's got their own pace to go at. And if you're going to be the type to essentially, I guess, cast blame or look down on somebody for not, you know, participating or growing, I guess one of the best ways I look at it is, am I helping or hurting in what I'm trying to do? And you can help somebody by not necessarily coaching them and telling them what they need to do, but maybe asking questions and, you know, say they did fail at something or you need to coach them through something. It's like, is this something that's kind of a pattern? And is there something maybe that you could do to step past it versus you need to be doing, and just maybe try to come alongside them? Because there is the whole, I have the answers and you're an idiot vibe that comes out, and that ultimately, you know, is hurting. Or you can help somebody grow, and it's a challenge to help somebody grow. I get it, but it's also, again, totally worth it. And if you potentially are a leader, it's worth growing the person, because they're going to be an asset to you and everything you're doing, and they're going to represent whatever's going on better and themselves, and they're going to be happier, and happier people put out better quality everything.
Yeah. You're doing it for them, not to them, right?
Yeah, totally. And you can't force them to do it. You can just keep helping and as best you can and be there to support.
Well, it sounds like the kind of thing you would want someone to do for a customer who doesn't understand specialty coffee yet.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that you got me thinking about as you're talking there is, you're a boss, you're an owner, and you want to develop your people and help them grow as professionals, and the benefit of years of knowledge, you want to communicate that well. For those of us who are baristas in shops where not everything that is done in the shop is perfect. Okay, so
Right.
so we might be frustrated and go and read a book and help us develop. But there are things that even the most imperfect shop can teach you. How do we tap into the opportunity to learn from even the most imperfect resource we have, which might be our current employer?
Yeah, I mean, man, there's always learning experiences. Gosh, that's an interesting question the way you posed it. I think, well, what I would always do, and I wouldn't always do this in a way where it made me bummed out or negative. It would just, I would look at things and then I'd try to ask myself, is there a way to make this either faster? Or I'd look through the guest's eyes and I'd say, what do they experience when they see us do whatever we do? And all of those things, if you're being, analytical with it, are learning opportunities. You walk out and you say you come in every day on your day off and you just observe for a quick minute. Like, what does it feel like when I walk in the front door? Am I getting a greeting? Is this happening? Is that happening? And then you go maybe to another place like we talked about, and you walk in there and you're like, wow, this place makes me feel really, really awesome. What are they doing that we're not doing? And that's to me, kind of in the vein of what we're talking about. One of the ways that I think we could learn the most is just comparing and contrasting. Like, how does it feel to walk into a place? And I mean, full disclosure, do you get special treatment because you work at the place? Do you walk in and you get attention, but a normal guest doesn't get any attention at all? That's something to think about. And are you open-minded enough to see the big picture? It's part of that. I think that you can learn all the time. I mean, I'm in my shop every day wishing a million things are still, continuing fixed or at this level where I see us going, but, time and effort have to happen in the process, and there's just no possible way for everything to be perfect in 1 year. And it's just you just have to continue to look for those things and be positive through it, and realize that everybody's striving to be good. Nobody's trying to not be awesome at their job, hopefully. And gosh, I know that doesn't really answer it. That's such a complex question to me.
No, it totally answers a lot of it. I think there's something that I'm learning even after, you and I have, I think 16, 17 years in the industry. One of the things that I never did as much as I try to now, and I'm still not really great at it, is viewing the owners or viewing those who are before me, let's call them elders or whatever,
right,
as sources of information more so than providers of jobs.
Right.
Because they got there somehow. And even if they tick you off a little bit with the way that they act or say things, or didn't give you that one shift off that you really, really wanted, they still know more than you technically. And so it's kind of like they're still providing what you're explaining to us, which is like, this shop exists because of the owners. Like, they made it happen and you're working in it. So now it's an opportunity for you to grow within this framework that has been, you've walked into as a barista.
Right.
But then there's more sources of knowledge around you than you realize. And it can supplement the information you're getting from books and videos and inspirational literature.
Oh, big time. I mean, I guess, and hopefully the people you work for are open enough and able to answer questions. But I think that's something that's really insanely, there's tons to learn. I mean, people don't realize if you're the owner, you have all these weird things you have to do that people who just make coffee and run service maybe forget. They're so time consuming. Like, I mean, just creating one good module on training. If you want to bang one out, sure. Yeah, cool. 3 hours. It won't be very good. It might take a day or two or a week to just bang out a training on just the the welcoming protocol and how you ring somebody through the register and your steps of service. And then beyond that, like, okay, cool. We have to be intentional as owners on where we put people and why, and doing payroll and paying bills and all these weird things that a lot of, I think, team members forget, or just they assume it doesn't take as long as it does. And it's just the weirdest thing to transition from somebody who's made coffee for whatever 14-ish years to somebody who makes coffee and also now has to, have email correspondence and answer questions like crazy from people all over the place, and who wants to give good service still from that platform, but also wants to give good service to our team. And there's just tons to learn. If you ask your owners what's going on and they're not so overwhelmed that they can't actually like break it down for you, and you like get them to talk through some of those things, you'll see that there's a lot of hidden picture pieces to running a business that are kind of, unfortunately, slightly maybe boring to some, that have absolutely nothing to do with the service of running the shop every day. And it's a complex thing if you ever want to run a coffee shop.
Yeah, it's right in the vein of why you got interested in personal development from the beginning of our talk here about how things work and why does this shop work the way it does. These are the inside pieces. Yeah,
there's complexity to it, or you can just, be one of those people who thinks it's easy, and you'll be one of the millions of coffee shops out of business because it's hard.
Sure. Absolutely. I think, I'm not sure what episode number it was, but Why Is My Boss So Lazy was one of the Cat and Cloud podcast episodes that I think speaks to this, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it spoke to us we were being vulnerable and just we were transitioning. I had brought my team leaders and passed them the torch officially of running the 2 stores. And it was really weird because, I don't make the schedule anymore, but I coach the schedule, and I'm not the first line of conversation for everybody in our company for the first time in a year, basically. And it's not that I don't trust them. It's just that I'm self-conscious. I don't want everybody to think that the owner's not interested anymore and the owner doesn't care about me anymore. They just want me to talk to these people and they're going to be gone all the time. And it's like, yeah. So totally, that is what that speaks to.
So let's get back a little bit, because I love what we're talking about, and I think that it fits, especially for those of us who are in management and in leadership roles right now. Broadly speaking, the role of personal development in a professional coffee person's life, what do we risk if we just don't do it?
Oh my gosh. I think you risk oh man, I mean, what you're doing is you're just sabotaging yourself and your ability to be the best version of you. And I think that's the biggest fail, because I think you probably don't have to do it. And depending on what you want out of your job, you could probably actually still be successful. So, I mean, my problem is that I want to strive for greatness and I want people around me to be great. And so that for me is why I do it. I want to provide freedom for not only myself, but for like team members in Cat and Cloud. I want to provide things that I never got from other companies. And I think that it's totally achievable, but it has to be more than just me seeking personal development. It has to be them as well. And so again, your motivation, it comes down to who you are and what you want. If you just want to be a badass barista, you could just learn from somebody who's really good in our industry or one of those quote unquote best companies. And a lot of people will take that as good enough. I just don't think it's good enough. Does that help? Just how I feel.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm so broad.
I love it. I love just, it's even just the hesitation to be like, well, obviously, bad things will happen. I mean, if you don't develop personally. So as we end here, what final advice would you have for those of us who are wanting to grow professionally, grow personally? What's some final words you could leave us with?
I would say never settle, and know that there is so much information out there. Take as much of it in, and after you find out who and what you are, internally, what makes you tick, what your values are, get as much information you can, and then take the best pieces of all that information and apply it to your life, and do it relentlessly. Like, start every morning if you can with a little bit of like 10 minutes of, call it journal time, and logging just your goals, and look into the future with, what do I want 10 years from now, and just make tiny steps towards whatever that is. You know, for me, like I said before, it's freedom for myself, and the ability to provide freedom, which means I need to bring in a certain amount of money for me, but not only for me, for my team, so that we can do neat things. And I need to work on programs within my company that provides freedom and fun and whatever. So I would say take in as much information as possible. Go to classes, go to seminars. You know, I went to the Disney Institute, which is just, they teach you what they do. And they're like, this is what we do verbatim. This is how we implement it. And you can take it and apply it to your company how you want or not, but you're paying to be here. So we only make $86 billion a year. You don't have to take it as truth or not. You know, it's up to you. But, you know, it's like, these people aren't lying. So, I mean, you have to be willing to have course correction. You have to be willing to just say, I don't know everything and I never will. And you have to be willing to have those kind of conversations with yourself and others, and try to take it as fun. Don't take it as you're not good. Take it as I'm getting better. Because, I mean, if you take it as I'm not good, you're going to just sabotage yourself and ultimately just continuously put yourself down and find yourself just burning out.
Man, that's a lot. That's great.
I just did a lot.
No,
I always do a lot.
Excellent. No, I think that just that last part there, encapsulating what we talked about is great. So, how can people stay in touch with you and what you're doing with Cat and Cloud, and just generally find you on the internet?
Yeah, so I am Jay Trubaka on every platform. That still is me. And then if you wanted to email me about anything, Jared, my name, Jared, at catandcloud.com. And I do my best to respond to everybody. I love helping, and, you know, if you need advice, I just like doing that. And again, I don't know everything, but that's where you'd find me. And then our website's catandcloud.com, and we also have a podcast, which you could find pretty easily, I think, with our name.
Yeah, we'll link to the books that you recommended and any others that you tell me if we get off here, and also your website. So thank you so much, Jared, for talking to me and talking to us about this. This is just a huge subject, and I think you broke it down in a wonderful way, and I'm encouraged, and I'm willing to bet that all of us listening are encouraged as well.
Well, thank you. You did. That was awesome. I like having somebody else ask questions. It's great.
Good change of pace.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much.
So out of all that Jared shared, I have 10 things that he shared step by step that will help you develop personally, that will help you draw from outside the industry and help you optimize the kind of learning and development you get from where you are and from within the industry. We're not going to go through all 10 right here. You'll find them in the show notes. So be sure and get that from the website. And what I want to say about all of this is just from what he shared, I think vulnerability and honesty is such a huge thing. And it's going to be the secret to your success in this, because being vulnerable and honest with other people means you allow them to help you. Even if you have to be vulnerable and honest with yourself first, developing that self-knowledge. And when you're honest and vulnerable with yourself and others, you allow others to help you, and you allow material to help you. You know that voice that says, "That's not me," or when you're reading a book and it's talking about a staff member who is causing problems, or a boss that's mismanaging their employees. That time when you start thinking about others when you're reading it, like, oh, that's my old boss, or oh, that's my brother, he does that all the time, or oh, that's my coworker, is just like this person here. Being vulnerable and honest kind of looks like you thinking of how that applies to you first, not just scapegoating it onto other people. So I would say for me, and there's a lot of awesome points here, that's kind of this major key for making all of this really stick, is being vulnerable and honest, and then pushing through the discomfort of that and into a greater understanding of yourself and the world around you, because people generally are willing to help, but you have to be willing to be helped in the first place. So go back to the notes, look through these 10 things that Jared was saying. I really appreciate his story, and he'll be the first to admit that he is developing as a person and a professional along the way. So once again, my thanks to Jared for coming on the show and chatting with me about this. I'm super grateful. I really am excited to talk about this with anyone, but especially somebody who is putting their money where their mouth is and making these things happen in real time. So much love and respect to the crew over there at Cat and Cloud Coffee. And if you haven't already subscribed to the Cat and Cloud Coffee podcast, be sure to do that. There's a lot of great content there. It'll help you in your professional journey. And also go to catandcloudcoffee.com, learn more about their business. And also, I wanted to give you a list of books that you should pursue and see about reading. The ones recommended by Jared were Getting Naked by Patrick Lencioni, then Be Our Guest, that is produced by Disney, and then there's Time Management Magic and Creating Magic by Lee Cockrell. Then the book Legacy by James Kerr, and Setting the Table by Danny Meyer, of course. I would add to that the book Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. I highly recommend that book. So Getting Naked, Be Our Guest, Time Management Magic and Creating Magic, Legacy, Setting the Table, and Leadership and Self-Deception. I think these are some good books that if you just start a small library, they'll probably set you on a pretty good course. So if you want to know more about Keys to the Shop, you can go to keystotheshop.com. There you will find all of the past episodes available for you to play and binge listen to if you'd like, as well as all the show notes that are downloadable PDFs for you to use as reference on your personal development journey. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so by emailing chris@keystotheshop.com, and I'll look forward to hearing from you. Any questions, comments, or suggestions on how to make this show more valuable for you and better. And that's it for the show today. I really appreciate your time, and I hope that this week affords you the opportunity, or I hope that you make the opportunity happen for personal development in your career and personally, and that some of what we talked about today can help you in that pursuit. So again, thank you very much, and as always, I hope that this episode, as well as all of the past episodes on this show, have given you keys to the shop.